I got off of Restream and went to StreamYard. I kept having so much trouble with my mic that I just whatever. I just find a new platform, and that seems to work okay.
And StreamYard's better. I've thought about going there.
Yeah, it's a little bit cheaper too, but at least I haven't had problems with it yet. So who knows?
All right, Pete. So you drove from Houston to Austin?
Yeah.
Last night?
Yeah.
You were staying in a rental house?
Airbnb
or something?
No, I rent a hotel. Like way down south, a little south. Because I decided that it's probably cheaper if I'm way outside the city. I just drive a little extra, and so save some good money.
Nice.
Also, I see you have my anti-tax printed out right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Notes too. You're really prepared.
This is the least prepared I've been in a while.
Really?
But I already know what stuff I was going to ask anyways.
Awesome.
Let's see. Someone's watching. Who's out there? David.
Howdy, David. Good morning to you too, sir.
Get that off my face. David, thanks for coming in early. Does the sound come through okay? Can you hear us both?
Hope we can hear Pete.
Would
be bad.
How's it sound, David? How's it sound?
It's definitely picking up your mic. So
it is.
Yeah, when you hovered over, it showed your mic was picking up sound. So
check.
Sound check. Who else is in here? Can y'all hear us?
Yeah, it's picking up sound.
Okay, we're good.
You're good. Sweet. Let's tweet out this link.
Yeah.
Get some people in here.
Yeah, let's do it. Oh, look at that. Yeah, I got my notification.
Oh, nice. All right.
Cool. All right, let's get this thing out there.
Awesome. Good, David. Now Pete Quinones is coming in. In fact, let me redo that tweet. And we'll see, make sure he's all good. Oh, Pete is right there. Whoops.
Hi.
Howdy, Pete. How you doing?
Hello. What's going on?
Can you hear us okay? I've never done this, Pete, with someone else joining me without headphones. Is it echoing? Is it all good?
It doesn't sound like it's echoing to me.
All righty.
Well, this boomer has figured out some technology before my very eyes. All right. Just copy and pasting this link around. Sweet. Weird. We're in person.
Yeah, I know.
It's so strange.
It's very different.
You're not supposed to do this. Based. Andrew, we're playing a trick on you. Pete is in the next room.
Really? No way.
Dun dun dun.
I believe it.
What are we going to talk about?
I think I was going to take questions from the audience.
Okay. Well, that works too. You post it on Facebook as well. I got questions too, though.
Of course.
Pete got questions for this guy too?
Sure, why not?
I want to know about the anti-tax framework mixed with archotropism in this town for me.
Oh, in this
what
town,
it would look like.
Town of Lockhart. All right.
Because that's what matters for me at the moment. If I can make something happen or not.
Yeah, you can.
All right. One of the things I want to point out too, once we get people going, I've seen it criticized that you're ripping off Curtis Yarvin.
Really?
And I think it's interesting because I know you weren't reading Curtis Yarvin when you started writing all this stuff.
No, not really. Basically, but 4 years ago, I thought I was all alone. So it was really, I didn't start hearing the name Curtis Yarvin until Malice came out with his book.
Okay.
And basically that was just the first time I heard the name. I didn't start reading him until like Matt started talking about him in 2020.
Yeah, same here actually. He took he's an acquired taste. The first time I heard him, maybe it was with Thad. I can't remember. Maybe it was with Pete. No, with Pete's the first time I thought, okay, wait, I kind of do like this guy. I think the first time with Thaddeus, I was like, this guy's a little odd. His the way he speaks is strange. His laugh and I definitely
I read Why I'm Not a Libertarian by him. And then he made a lot of good points, but when he got to the ending, I thought his solutions were libertarian. At the end of the essay, I'm like, this sounds sort of like libertarian, like a libertarian corporate state kind of thing.
Yes.
So I was confused by him, and I wrote him off until Thad had him on, and then he started talking about Hoppe and how much he was influenced by Hoppe. That's when I was like, okay, let me give this guy another read and everything. So that's when I started reading him again and decided to invite him on. So.
Another thing I noticed, I guess I had fallen victim to like just hearing that, oh, he's dangerous and his stuff's, you won't believe the crazy things he says. And then I read it and I was like, and he really, when you listen to him, he seems harmless. I didn't get the demonization of him, which, that's a blue pill outlook. I don't know why I would have fallen for it to begin with, but I jumped into it.
It's one of those things where he wrote, and then a bunch of people were inspired by him and took it to levels that it shouldn't have went to.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And so he automatically becomes, the argument between Paul Gottfried and him and whoever, the father of the alt-right kind of thing. Yeah. And it's like, I don't really see that. I mean, he thinks that essentialism is, he seems to think it's kind of stupid. It doesn't really make any sense. But there are other people who argue in the opposite direction. And I mean, I don't know. He hasn't changed over the years, but he's definitely tweaked a lot.
Yes.
And, it seems now that he's like totally clear pilled, like totally live like you're in occupied Germany or something like that. And which makes sense. I mean, but, I never really, when you start reading him, if he starts quoting like crime statistics, they're statistics. I mean, he's quoting statistics. I mean,
there's
I'm
nothing
sorry,
objectionable about that, or legitimately objectionable.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, he's just making a point. If you're making a point about cities, I mean, I ran away from the city. I'm not as far out of the city as I could be, but I'm pretty friggin' far compared to where I was.
Yeah.
And and I was running away from a certain thing. I was running away from crime. I was running away from leftists.
Yeah.
I was running away from chaos.
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and seeking order.
Yes.
And it's like I hear what they're saying about maybe ripping him off, but I think it really is truly a case of like multiple people arriving at the same correct answer through different means.
Yeah, it almost seems like people have kind of a limited perspective, and they just say, well, this guy sounds like this guy, therefore he's ripped him off.
Yeah.
We run into that a lot. What's up, Tho Bishop?
Howdy, Tho.
Yeah, and that's Pete, what you said about a lot of people started with him and then took it to places they shouldn't have taken it. Maybe that's why he got the bad reputation. Very much like Stevie Ray Vaughan. If you just listen to Stevie Ray Vaughan, he's actually good, but sometimes your ears are tainted because you've heard so many bad bar blues bands, and it's like, oh God, this again. It's like, well, this was the original. Those other guys took it to places it should not have gone.
Carlos is in the house.
Carlos, what's up, man?
Howdy, Bo.
You're not watching football, not college football, Carlos, but I know it's Saturday. I know there's soccer football. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's like Paul Gottfried. It's people who demonize Paul Gottfried have never read Paul Gottfried.
Right.
And I've had him on the show twice, and his description of the left is inarguable.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not going to hold back. I mean, there are some people who can do just, write or talk and describe the left and be very clinical about it and not have any emotion. That's not Paul Gottfried.
No.
And, and plus his past associations and everything. Yeah, God, my past associations come back to haunt me. It'd be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Just in my status life, people that I used to hang out with.
Yes. Same here. Texas libertarians alone. Let's get into some of this. We got some people joining us now. What's up? Oh, nice.
You're welcome, Carlos. That's awesome. That's awesome. That was a great talk. I like being challenged on some things, especially immigration.
Yes, me too. He challenged me a little bit on that. Carlos, I've also got a good impression of you. I won't do it on this live stream. Brittany thinks it's pretty spot on, but when I see you again, you'll see. Andrew, welcome to Counterflow Live in person. High five.
I'm so stoked to be here, man.
Yeah, this is my first. I think this is the first. Yeah, this is the first guest I've had in person. I did Carlos's show here, but I was technically on his show, so this will be my first time. So welcome. Glad you're doing this. I got little notes down here. I want to get into archotropism, the anti-tax framework. I want to reference it on how it would work in a small town like this. For those that don't know this, I'm in the town of Lockhart, Texas. It's about 30 minutes southeast of Austin. I wish I could tell you the population here. My wife has quoted it to me like 5 times, and I keep forgetting. I think it's about 20,000.
Okay.
I think. It's funny. I work off how many fire stations are in a place to kind of guess the population, and there's 2 here. There's 2 fire stations, which should probably put us somewhere around 20,000, I think. Would the system that you kind of discuss and study and write about work in a town like this?
It's perfect size.
Okay.
The smaller, the better.
Okay.
And there's no size limit. This thing is infinitely scalable up and down. And the only places it's really not going to work is your big blue cities because, okay, you have the wrong kind of people there. And, you can make an idiot-proof system and idiots will still...
What's the wrong kind of people?
Yeah. The wrong kind of, the socialist kind, the blue kind.
So it would not work well in Austin.
So rich white people.
Yeah.
Rich white women.
Exactly.
They'll try to invest the anti-tax in like socks for hobos, and they've got plenty of those in Austin. So,
yeah, did you notice that driving through? Andrew drove from Austin to Lockhart just a little while ago. What did you think of all that?
Oh my gosh, yeah, that place is like a third world country.
Yeah,
and
parts of it really truly are. To be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed it like last time I went to Austin with I met what's his name. Senator from Massachusetts. What's his name? He was here. Not Massachusetts. Maine. Eric Brakey. There we go.
Brakey. Yeah.
Yeah, I met him there one time, and I drove through it. I was like, oh my god, because like if you're used to Texas and how like just everything looks wealthy. And I mean, that was like the first thing I noticed when I first came to Texas. Like, wow, they treat their people humanely, because I could see one restaurant after another, and my economics brain immediately says, "Oh, that's because the people have enough money to afford all of this, because otherwise it wouldn't be here; it would be out of business." But you're used to having such incredible wealth spread everywhere, and then you go into Austin, and it's like, what the fuck that just happened? It's like someone turned on the poverty switch.
Yeah. And it's funny. There are very, very wealthy areas there, like Westlake and West Austin and Tarrytown. But then downtown, southeast, northeast, it's it is like parts of it are definitely like a third world country. Mm-hmm. And it was funny at first when they legalized the camping for homeless people. It was everywhere except for City Hall. It was illegal there. So they didn't want to see it on their own doorstep, of course, as they go into work every day. But then it got so bad that it took over there too. And so just even outside of City Hall, it was like, I joked that it was a state park, a national park for people to go camping in. But that's
it's just like the piles of garbage you see. I mean, that's just the most revolting sight. Garbage stacked, like one or two people tall. It's like that's the sort of thing I saw, and I was just like, what is this?
And it used to be, I can speak for it. I came to Austin in 98. It was so cool for about at least the first 10 years. So cool. The music was great. The people were great. I told a friend of mine one time, if we could just get the hippies out, it would be good. And he actually made a good point. He said, it's some of the hippie culture that has a unique influence on Austin and what makes it kind of what it is. I agree with that. But then all of a sudden came the last 10 years, and it's the wrong kind of lefty influence, unfortunately.
Yeah. And but yeah, so if you're in Austin, like this is going to be the anti-tax ain't going to work for you, because the blue kind of people are running the show there, and there's nothing there that can stop. It's like you can't put idiots in charge of any system. There's no system you can possibly develop that idiots won't use their ingenious idiocy to find a way to pervert and destroy. So
I think Tho has a very pertinent question here.
He does, especially considering it's college football Saturday. Andrew, can you see what he's asking there?
Preservation of society subsidized college football program. Well, one is called archotropism, not anarchotropism. Anarchotropism, I made the point that we just call that Christian love. That's the only anarchotropic force, because it does not require force, and it actively incentivizes you away from using force, because, real love does not require force. And, that's called rape. Yeah, we don't like that. And so archotropism reconcile a private property rights society with the preservation of state subsidized football programs. Actually. And with a private state. Yeah, sure. That's totally fine. Private statecraft is like one of the big three, kind of ANCAP ideas. And it's the one that doesn't really get talked about. That if you are the legitimate private property owner, then you are the legitimate monopoly on aggression for your property. Because, I mean, obviously owning the property requires you to have the amount of force to to legitimately hold that property and enforce your property rights. So therefore, you have a natural right to aggression on property that you legitimately own. And granted, I mean, there are some limits that come with that. But if someone wants to live on your property, they sign a contract with you and get rid of some of their rights. Like, I guess if you were, if they just trespass onto your property, minimal force to just remove them. But if they, sign a rental lease with you or something like that, then you can easily write statecraft into that lease agreement. So, that's the way a private statecraft would work, and so if you want to have state subsidized football, which I think is a wonderful idea, that it'd be very good to have have that on private property and have a private state that is helping fund that, because leisurely activity is good for the populace and keeps them from wanting to wake up on Saturday morning and overthrow a government.
Wow. So how was that answer? I'm going to get a beer real quick. You don't want anything?
No, I got my giant water bottle.
All right.
Pete, 1 gallon of water every day. I got a gallon and a half yesterday.
I'll take over. So, Andrew.
Howdy.
What we talked about when I did the interview was like leftists moving in. So let's talk about this. Okay, so say the town is 70% red and 30% blue. Do you agree that, I mean, like, Yarvin talks about how you don't want to punish the left once we defeat them. And, that's like one of the hardest pills for me to swallow when he writes it. But that you want to make them like, he talks about how there are still, like people who are in the Nazi regime collecting pensions in Germany. And how do we deal with that 30%?
Well, step one, I would say gerrymander the fuck out of whatever, districts you're giving them. And it's like, I make no apologies for gerrymandering, any state I'm in charge of. And so that's step number one. But I would say that what you really want to do is it's a twofold thing. If you understand that the left is, all of their policy prescriptions, all of their behaviors are driven by their time preference for power, every single last one of them. So what you would try to do is, have some sort of, engineered incentive system that actively incentivizes them to be lower time preference, to move them away from the more pernicious behaviors that they're known for. And that's like incentive system number one. That's the idea of like a pension system. I'm paying you to be civilized, so shut the fuck up and don't take the don't take the goose that laid the golden egg and slit its throat, which the leftists are prone to do. And so that's step number one, to actually give them a real incentive system. And I would follow that up. Step number two is that if you have behaviors that you think are bad for your society, this is something Hoppa's talked about, that hey, the high preference behaviors are corrosive to civilization, and they actively lead towards aggression and towards the emergence of a real state, not just a private one, but a real one. And that is going to endanger the liberty of all the other tenants. So you need to be actively disincentivizing those behaviors, and you can do that through if you're in a covenant, you make the rules and they need to follow them, and you can obviously set reasonable standards of what qualifies as degeneracy and which is prohibited, and what is actually moderation, because that's one of that's one of those cardinal virtues that civilization is built on, is temperance, and that means going exactly the right distance and no further, or which is completely different than teetotalism, which is you don't do it at all. So prohibition obviously doesn't work because that's teetotalism. That's not a virtue. That's actually a vice, and it's an equal and opposite vice to degeneracy. And you want to make sure that people are allowed to partake of these activities in moderation, but not go further. And so I would I would try and incentivize that, maybe, or disincentivize it with like maybe sin taxes or stuff like that. They're not truly punitive, but make it so that you need to be you need to be substantially wealthy, which means you have a lower time preference for production and stuff like that. So that's a way of getting around that. And I would funnel those into the anti-tax.
Yeah, but for the ones that are particularly vile, we have helicopters.
They gotta be
we have helicopters on hand, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you get someone who's in there, this is like in the old anarcho covenant of the Bible, like not 2 out of the 10 big time commandments were you shall not covet that which belongs to your neighbor. It was important to put in there twice, and granted those were 2 different kinds of coveting, but it's really impressive because that's the one time in the Bible that God actually says you're not even allowed to think that, don't even try. And so it's like this is the only time you have a prohibition on thought. And forget prohibition on speech. He actually made a prohibition on thought. Don't think it. That's sin. You shall not covet that your neighbor's property. And so anytime, and I would easily write that into a any sort of anarcho covenant or a private state is laws against covetousness. And if they break that, you're out.
That's also why whenever I move to a house, I make sure all the people around me have ugly wives. So I don't think
your wife doesn't get
no, I don't want to think those thoughts. They're prohibited. So Caleb Brown asks, Andrew, how do you respond to the claim that incentivize the state to make it a private property society sounds neat, but it's just an engineer word salad fantasy? I
think that's a very fair criticism, and I would respond to it by saying that this is actually in their power interests. And it's like by remember I said that illegitimacy. I said on Pete's show, illegitimacy is actually a restraint on power. The most kind of illegitimate government is like a monarch. And that's why it was so small and nice, because everyone knows that this is the one guy who's in charge. And he's taken all of the power all for himself, and kind of fuck him. And he's not giving the people the aggression that they really want, because he has an incentive to hand this family business down to his kids. And if he does, then fuck him. We're going to overthrow him off with his head. And that happened repeatedly. So illegitimacy is actually a restraint on the power of government. Democracy gets substantially worse because it does have that illusion of legitimacy where the people have an illusion of consent and there really isn't one. And that's why democracies tend to be far more violent and far more powerful. And but that is mainly because it's a very poorly misengineered incentive system where you're actively incentivizing people to behave like barbarians. You reward them for that. You if you're paying people to do something, they're going to do it. And it doesn't have to be rewarded by money. It can be just power that you're rewarding them with. So if the win conditions for a democracy are 50% plus 1, then you can say design exactly your positions that 50% plus 1 will approve of, and fuck the other 49. If you're rewarding people for dividing people like that, that's why you're going to have a lot of really bad behaviors from democracy. Whereas with a private incentive system, because there's voting on both sides, then you can, and basically you have the management in the middle that will give you a much better set of incentives. Because this is something all of the corporations we have today have figured out, is that having shareholders up top and customers down bottom, those are 2 different kinds of voting, and management's playing tug of war in the middle. It's like, okay, if they really want to please the shareholders, they might have to alienate the customers, and this kind of keeps them balanced in the middle. And and they don't want to alienate the customers, because that's how you go bankrupt. So they have to play a neat little role balancing the time preferences of each group, both the shareholders and the customers, and kind of balancing between the 2. And this is what leads you to a much better productive outcome, because you're balancing time preferences there between consumption and production.
Can I jump in?
Go ahead.
I see we have Donnie Gebert in the chat, and anyone who's talked to Donnie knows that his first book he was talking about he's not jumping to anarchism. He was talking about basically becoming your own senator. And I think that a lot of what you're talking about and a lot of what he's talking about can generally you guys can probably work with each other, because like some of the stuff he talks about is, okay, so say there's a bridge project and they want to collect money for it. Well, you put it on a blockchain, and then you pay up front you donate up front to pay for this bridge. And now you say it's going to be a toll bridge because you got to pay for it, and there's no taxes. So you're going to, now that you paid for it up front, you donated up front, you get to use it forever. You never get charged for it, but somebody else is going to get charged for it. So how do you think like blockchain payments like that, having a ledger and a public ledger, could actually help with your
plans? That's a beautiful new piece of technology that's come out is now I know exactly who owns what, and you get rid of the rehypothecation problem that we have currently in our financial market, where you don't know who owns what. And that's a really big problem, because if I can take a loan of a stock in the market and then rehypothecate it 37 times, greatly increase the supply of what really is just one thing. And now there's like 30 something claims on one piece of property and you don't really know who owns what. And that's a major problem that this blockchain technology solves, is because it tells me exactly who owns it. And if I were designing a private system like that, I would love to make sure that, we are absolutely tokenizing every piece of property that's owned by someone, and having the private property prevents conflict, because we know that this is mine, that's yours, and there's no ambiguity there. It's when there's ambiguity that you get problems. And so if we have like a private state of some sort, or we have a private toll bridge, I want every piece of property like that on a blockchain, so that everyone knows exactly who owns what, and we don't have any sort of ambiguity there.
Cool. I'd be very interested in hearing you two talk, because I think that I think in the beginning there would be some kind of disconnect, and then all of a sudden, as you guys talk more, it would come in, and I think there would be a gelling there.
Yeah, that's like the one part of my plan which I haven't quite gone public with yet, is how do you deal with the ownership issue? And I've been looking at tokenization, but I just don't understand the law about it enough right now to have a working plan with it. So if we have to, I'd love to be connected with somebody who I can talk to about that, and understand how how you differentiate a token from a token asset from a security. That's the thing I don't know how to do yet, and I would love to find out.
Yeah, Donnie can talk. I know that.
You guys have a great talk.
Yes, definitely. The population here is 15,000.
All right.
That's just about perfect.
That's right in my hometown. My hometown is like 14,000. So
where is your hometown?
My hometown is in Mount Dora, Florida.
Okay.
So that's right. That's right. Oh, really? You know about that?
Mm-hmm. I know Mount Dora. I know all of Florida. I lived in Florida for 20 years. I know so much of much Florida.
Yeah.
What's up, Josh? Good to see you in here as well. Carlos, Bill Maher can indeed stay in my community if we're having this theoretical world discussion, because he's probably the only lefty that I watch and like as far as public personas go, because he's still somewhat red-pilled on a couple of things, which at this point for the left, I'll take Bill Maher.
Yeah.
It's the town I'm in now is 24,000, by the way.
Oh, that's nice. That's so nice.
From Atlanta to 24,000.
What is Atlanta? It's got to be fifth or sixth biggest.
As far as it's got to be like 4 million. It's got to be 4 million now.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. What a nice change. How far are you, Pete, from the biggest city driving wise?
45 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Andrew. Let's talk about. Give a brief overview of archotropism first. One of the biggest things I take from it that I find extremely valuable, and actual life lessons, not just the structures of power and government that we talk about, but kind of the thing where you're saying I use January 6th as an example.
Absolutely.
What those people did on January 6th did not help them and help people, let's say, in our circles in any way.
No,
it did not help the right. They chose to be loud, public, and fight this power that they clearly were not ready to fight. And all of a sudden, now they use that against us. That's kind of one of your tenets in archotropism, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, basically they caused chaos, and they gave the state the perfect opportunity to extract, re-extract order, and the price of that order is always more power.
Yeah. So they shot themselves in the foot, and now half of them are sitting in prison for the last 8 months, especially their spokesperson, as we know.
And now that the state has a perfect opportunity to say, oh, well, this is why they're all terrorists, and we need to, turn the instruments of, the Patriot Act back on the people, which they weren't designed to do. But this is the power grab you just enabled.
And it was right as my conspiratorial mind gets working in this part of it. It's right as the war on terror is just about done. As Tho said, we're post war on terror right now. And right as that happens, you give them the excuse to start a new one.
Yep.
And it happens to be on us. Bad timing. It makes you think, that's for sure. But give kind of a general overview of what archotropism is for those who are new to it, or for those who are still trying to mentally work through part of it. We don't have to get into the weeds with it, but just kind of give what does this state? What does it mean? What should we take from it?
The archotropism is the process by which a state derives its power by extracting order from chaos, or it's the way that the state uses naturally occurring chaos and extracts order from it and uses that as a way of justifying its own existence and increasing its own power. And so I also use it kind of colloquially to refer to the incentives of power, and because if you understand praxeology, that humans act using means over a period of time to achieve ends, then if one of those ends is always power, they're going to use means in order to achieve power. So and this is why I'm a little iffy upon the idea of a free market economics, because now by definition you're trying to ignore an entire other branch of economics, which is non-free market, and that's exactly what reality is, because reality includes all human behaviors, not just a few of them. And I can understand the idea of this is something we want to move towards, but the idea that you're actually going to cash the car, I think, is a little that's probably a little idealistic and probably not true.
So it's also then a kind of a way of explaining human tendencies, human nature, and what that's going to lead to every time. I mean, obviously there's elements of James Burnham in here. I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but maybe it's just one of those things where people come to some of these
great minds think alike.
Right,
yeah.
Right. So would you say you're explaining things as they actually happen and are, rather than the theoretical abstract thing that some of us have in our mind?
Yeah, well, what I'm trying to fill in is kind of you have Mises and Rothbard, who've basically worked out everything about how the market works, and I think they kind of excluded talking about, well, here's how the state's incentives work. And because I've read those chapters in Man, Economy, and State, because that's you can't read the whole thing. It's like a 1,500-page tome, and you can't possibly read all of Man, Economy, and State. I know some people have, but I just read the chapters on the state, and it seemed like they were trying to hand wave away the fact that this thing exists, and they didn't delve into why this thing exists. And those are the questions I was trying to answer with this framework. This is the last 1/3 of economics, and the state's 1/3 of the economy. That's why I say it's 1/3. So you can't ignore that exists. So
what do you want people in our circles to take from archotropism? What lessons should we pull from it?
Well, obviously the lesson is that all of us read one book,
right,
and decided we were smarter than everyone else. I've literally in the last 12 months read more books than I did in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Me too, actually.
Yeah, same.
And you know how many of them were libertarian books?
Not many. Yeah, right.
One right here.
I mean, Yeah, we just happened upon this book, and now we know more than everybody. Well, I guarantee you, the person I know more than you. People who talk like that,
Yeah,
are like, oh, they read the Machiavellians and now they think they know more. No, I do know more than you.
yeah.
Just letting you know.
Right.
I know more than you, and we can debate anytime. Well, no, I'm not going to debate someone like that. That just gives them credibility.
It does.
Yeah.
Yes.
But, yeah.
You're creating your own Archie flowers, and
Yeah.
you don't want to do that. And all these people really do think like Archie, and they're just they just don't quite realize that the ones actually put them on the spot yet. And I can be like 2 or 3 standard deviations above the normal intelligence, but I try not to lord that over people. And some of these people are 4 or 5 standard deviations beneath me. So some of these are I call them the 2 digits.
So they're looking up right now standard deviation.
I know.
I said on a podcast recently that I read like 2 Julius Evola books, and it's like, you're reading like the king of the fascists and everything. I'm like, I read Marx's The German Ideology. I read State and Revolution by Lenin. I read a bunch of Stalin too. No one complained about that.
Yeah, that's a funny thing.
They complain when I read Evola.
Yeah, because automatically when you read an author, it means you agree with every single thing the person's ever written or said. That's a strange. But yeah,
but we read one book, and now we think we know more than everyone else.
Yeah, and it was only Anatomy of the State. No.
Which, by the way, isn't really a book. It's more like an essay. And he's
referencing Burnham, though, because
Machiavellians.
Yeah.
Okay, Machiavellians.
So, aside from the lesson that we've only read one book, which is a funny, unfortunate lesson that some people take from this, what lessons do you want people in our circles, or really just anyone who's kind of open-minded or understands certain economics and political structures of power, what lessons should we take from archotropism?
The number one lesson you should take from archotropism is that power exists because it has value to it. And Mises and Rothbard both agreed that anything that has value is going to be done to that action is going to be done to the maximum, where that is done in the amount where that action is most valuable. So again, humans are kind of lazy monkeys. We want the most ends for the least amount of means, and balancing over time. And so if you understand that, okay, we want the most power for the least amount of work, and that's why the state exists. Because the way you maximize value is to create a hierarchy with people in charge of that hierarchy that enables collectivization and collective decision making and makes it very efficient. So, basically you have something that has value, and the way you maximize that value is to put a hierarchy on it. Okay, so you have an aggressive hierarchy, or a hierarchy for maximizing the value of aggression. That's a state, and that's going to be inevitable, and you need to deal with the incentive. You can't just hand wave it away as evil. And I think that's what a lot of people try to do. And when I had this debate on Twitter the other day where the guy only wanted to have the theological discussion about, why the state's so immoral. It's like, I agree, I just grant that automatically. Now let's talk about what to actually do about it with engineering. And he's like, no! And, that is like, it's like it broke his brain, because this guy could not, get off the idea that that you would need to get, hello, doggy. He couldn't get off of the idea that we're going to have anything other than a moral discussion. And, you can't just, when you're trying to deal with people's ideology, understand ideology is like the rationalization for the incentive. The incentive is the reason why they're doing the action. The ideology is kind of the rationalization for it. So they've already made the decision that they're going to do this aggression, and their rationalization is just the rationalizing why after the fact. It's a post hoc sort of thing. And so you're really, if you're trying to spread the message and spread the ideology of libertarianism, you're really arguing with the horse's ass instead of the horse's mouth. And because the real thing is the incentive. You need to design a system that deals with the incentive of aggression and makes it less valuable. Because wherever profit maximum is where it's going to be done to. So if it's less profitable, it's going to get done less. So how do you do that?
I think one of the things that a skeptical libertarian will come up with when they hear this, and so I want you to answer to kind of this possible critique is your end goal a libertarian society?
I would say it's a private property society.
Okay.
And which is, I guess, is libertarian.
Right. I know that some of these terms I have a rough time even asking them like this as well. But I know this criticism's out there. I think there's a thought that, well, what you want is some other form of statism. Can you answer that critique? Have you heard that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I've had that plenty of times. What I would respond to that is, okay, I understand where you're coming from, because for like 13,000 years, we've had one kind of state, and it's the illegitimate kind. And, for maybe the last 600, we've had kind of a hybrid system where you had a mixture of legitimately owned property and illegitimate, and with an illegitimate apparatus on top of it. And, what I'm saying is we're going to move to an entirely legitimate kind of statecraft where the state of the property is the owner of the property. And, therefore they legitimately have the right to do whatever they're doing. And if you disagree with that, then you need to be removed from their property. And it's the legitimate kind of statecraft that I think is what we're probably going to be moving towards anyway. And, and I think, what Ancapistan will really be, and I call this praxis, what the actual praxis of Ancapistan is going to be is a mixture of anarcho-covenants, single private property, probably in the more rural areas, and private states in your more urban cities, to where the private state is either either the private property owner in the urban environment is going to be either a customer of a private state, or they're going to be living on the private state's property. And it's probably more the latter than the former. But I think your Ancapistan is going to be a mixture of all three ideas, because all three are legitimate solutions. So, and I think that's just probably how it's going to be done.
Pete, you got anything?
Well, I think that the trap that a lot of people fall into is when they come in, they read, like, someone says, "Oh man, you got to read For a New Liberty. It's amazing." Yeah. And when you read it, he basically lays out how you would get to like an Ancapistan and what an Ancapistan would look like. And I think that's what people have in their heads. But I think Hoppe turns that upside down, because he's like, okay, this is how you get there. And he gives you like a step-by-step of how you get there. And the way you get there is you're going to have to use local politics, and you're going to have to use the state in some way, shape, or form. And the bumper sticker slogans, like the one I literally just had somebody tweet in response to one of my posts, "Good ideas don't require force." Well, I mean, that looks really good on a car, and it sounds really good. But there was a tweet earlier that was just like, it's what I've been trying to say for a while now. And it's like, and this person tweeted, "In my heart of hearts, I'm a libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, and probably always will be. But our philosophy didn't do shit during this pandemic except let a few of us retards breathe the rarefied air of the moral high ground a little more deeply than usual." And that's basically where I'm at. Am I a libertarian anarcho-capitalist who's consistent on everything? And, oh my God, DeSantis is a monster for what he's doing down there. Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah. I mean, on paper and, in theory and everything, because the state's illegitimate. All states are illegitimate. But we're living in the fucking real world. I mean, this is like there are men with guns driving around in your neighborhood who can bust into your house at any time, kill you, and get a paid vacation. Does anybody realize how psychotic that is? Well, how do you defeat that? By telling people to read Anatomy of the State, or maybe start working in your local government to take over your local government and tell them to stand down. and to change modern policing, in a way that, that is in line with the non-aggression principle. Or so, I mean, what are you going to do? You can only fucking do so much by getting people to read. This whole thing about starting a revolution, what happened the last time? It fell apart. I mean, a bunch of us, we had our minds changed, and now this ideology of liberty is all in my head, and I'm teaching it to other people. And we had lockdowns for 18 months, and they're talking about force vaccinating people, and it seems like didn't fucking help. But let's just be consistent pieces of shit, and on Twitter so that we can get likes, and and some of us out there, some libertarians are really fucking rich, like have a lot of money, and decided to get the vax. And now they're running around and they can go anywhere they want in the world, and they could escape this at will. And, maybe it's not touching them because they're very wealthy, and they're shitting on everybody because, this is what DeSantis is doing is not very libertarian. It's against libertarian principles to support DeSantis wanting to find private businesses. Fuck your private business. If I was mayor of my town, none of this shit would be happening. And the police would be enforcing it. And they would be enforced, and they would be against any federal fucking agent who wanted to come in here. They would fucking kill that agent and fucking dump his body.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. Gotta Waco their asses.
Fuck your libertarian principles when all this bullshit is happening in the world.
It's like, seriously, if you can't get it through your head that we're all acting in defense here, is that that using the state for legitimate defensive purposes is okay, which by the way is something said repeatedly, and I agree with. That if the only legal way I'm allowed to exercise my natural rights is by becoming the state and defending other people's natural rights, then that's absolutely what I have to do. I have a responsibility to do that, and if I don't, then I'm going to lose that right, because rights are born of responsibility. If you're irresponsible with them, you're going to lose them, and that's just the way the system works. So and rights are not inalienable. I'm sorry, that's just Jefferson's wishful thinking, and all
Jefferson
rights
the leftist.
Yes,
Jefferson the leftist.
Yes.
Very far to the right of where we are today, but yeah, for his time, he was to the left. That's unfortunate. I used to like him very much.
I love that
think about the quote, the tree of liberty must be refreshed with the blood of tyrants every generation. That's
yeah.
How's that not Lenin? How could that not be from like Lenin? Or, I mean, and people say that, and patriots say that, but they're not going to do it. It's just LARPing. It's just a huge LARP. So what are you fucking talking about?
Pete, they like you in the comments, which means we got actual good listeners in this, which is nice. I want to talk about the anti-tax framework. We don't have to get into the weeds so much, but all right. How would it work here? I've got a town right now, 15,000 people. It's for the most part red, with some sprinklings of hipster blue throughout. It's funny, people that left Austin from the left came here and can't figure out, maybe it was your politics that turns Austin.
I was just reminded that Jefferson was before Lenin.
Well, there you go.
My Lord.
Pete, I wish you would have known that.
My God, how'd you make that mistake, Pete?
God, I don't know. I don't know.
How would this? So let's talk about the anti-tax framework mixed with your ideas from archotropism. I don't say your ideas. I don't even like calling it that. Your observations, your objective observations.
Yeah, objective observations.
How would it work in something like this? Because there's a lot of what should we do? We've talked about Hoppa's what must be done. Got an episode with Deitz coming out on Monday. We talk a little bit about this. Mm-hmm. What would someone like me who wants to change the culture that I am living in do in a small town like this using your ideas?
Step one, find a partner who's going to run with you. So
for city council, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, like city council. Basically, you're going to have to shepherd this thing through. And basically, let's assume we have a written bill, and we're just, we're not going to go into what that is for right now. We're just going to assume we have the bill. And, the idea is, okay, that's the heavy lifting part, is getting the city council to actually do the job of writing law. So if you have that already done, pushing it through is a whole lot easier. So once you and you find a partner you trust and you agree that this is what we're going to try to do, get yourselves elected. And elected to city council. And at that point, I would say, okay, you have the bill. You're in the position where you're 2 votes out of, like, I don't know, 5 or 7. How many you have?
The people. Well, so I believe we have 8.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Okay.
6 or 8 here, which that's
good.
Too bad.
Yeah, and they're probably all Republican.
There's a lefty or 2 stuck in there, and I believe actually she's my person as we speak. And I was told she's not very popular. She ran unopposed last time.
That's how they get in there.
I know, it gives me kind of
good hope. We're gonna have Mayor Buck. Boy, does that sound Texan.
So let me ask you this before we get to that part. If I run for city council here, what kind of stuff should I talk about? What should I avoid? I can't come up with this anti-tax framework and read it to the public when I'm running, because we keep some of these things in secret. I don't want everything out there. This will be on my YouTube. This will be used against me. What kind of stuff should I run on? What should I avoid?
Well, because we're south of Austin, we know what a shit show that place is. I would run on, those fears, because, a lot of Republicans, they really fear Texas turning blue.
Okay.
And that would be the first thing I would go with is, I'm running here to, we have a Democrat right there. That's a danger to all of us. We know what happens when people like that get in charge. And I think we need to remove her and replace her with someone who's a little lot further to the right. And
don't Austin my Lockhart.
Yes, don't Austin my Lockhart. That's a really good way of putting it. And I would just run heavily on that. That, hey, we need a good solid right winger who's going to respect people's rights instead of trample them and turn Lockhart into Austin, because that's a latent fear all of us have here in Texas.
Okay.
And you're running on defending the people and providing them a level of safety. It's like you're always running on safety. Liberty's a byproduct of safety.
Should I bring up that the removal of the Confederate monument downtown, I'm against?
Probably stick that one off. Yeah, hold off on that one.
So, all right, I'm elected city council person. I've got one other person in there that I can for sure trust, and probably a couple that I lean towards trusting. Then what happens?
At that point, I would, notice for them that they are draw their attention to, if these are like more like kind of right-wing Republicans or normicons, then I would point out, okay, in our local government, I would guarantee you guys have a sizable reserve fund.
Okay.
And usually what this is used for is like kind of like years like COVID. So it might not be that sizable now because we just went through COVID, but normally, local governments will hold a reserve fund of like, maybe like 1 year of tax. And so they will, I think we're frozen. Oh, did we freeze through that, Pete? Oh, I can't.
Yeah, you froze up through that.
Okay. So, the reserve fund exists and it's used for, like years where the economy and they can't raise taxes and or the revenue from the sales tax falls substantially. And this is how they offset that. This is their basically their rainy day fund. And normally it kind of just sits in the bank, gathering inflation. And so, what I would talk to them about is, okay, these are Republicans, they're right-wingers, they really truly believe in being responsible with the powers of government and using government to protect people's natural rights. They really believe in that. So I would argue with them from that point of view that just leaving this money in the bank is not helpful. This is just gathering inflation. And by the way, we're seeing a massive inflation right now. And we if we're being responsible and responsible stewards of taxpayers' money, what we should be doing is putting this into a responsible investment fund where at least inflation can be offset and some sort of financial manager, and or 2 or 3, just to diversify, and tell them to that's a risk mitigation.
You guys keep cutting in and out.
Let me switch Wi-Fi real quick.
How's that?
This should be better.
All right, where did I start? Local government, then argue from responsibility. Is that where we were? Okay, yeah, so you argue from the point of being responsible stewards of taxpayers' dollars, and that's how I would argue that through, is that using this sort of sovereign, we can turn this into a miniature sovereign wealth fund, which a lot of very successful Nordic democracies have. Point people who've done this before, and I was just sent. I haven't gotten to read it yet. I was just sent a article last night about how there are actually urban wealth funds in these Nordic democracies, where the city that itself has a sovereign wealth fund. So we're not even the first people to do this. This is something that very advanced social democracies in Scandinavia have come up with a way of financing governments and offsetting the burden to their own taxpayers. And I think that's where we should put the returns, is give that back to the community in the form of tax cuts, because they know better what to do with their money than we do. And obviously the taxpayer, the consumer, knows best. And as good Republicans, we do believe in having responsibility to cut taxes and grow the economy and grow people's personal wealth. And because that always feeds back into us. And this is just a different way of doing that. And it's nothing special. Again, we're not the first people to do this, and we can easily look to the responsible people to inform us of how this should be done. And so
then to kind of bottom line it, the tax cuts can take effect for the people here in Lockhart because we've got a fund that we've been kind of sitting on, basically. Mm-hmm. And how does the fund then keep growing?
Yeah. So what you would do is you would say, okay, we will, only, take a certain percentage, every year. And we always allow we always leave a little extra in there, so it's going to continue growing. That way we don't need to raise taxes for it. And again, all of the money we're using has already been taxed, and there's no giving it back. So I mean, I'm sorry, there's no way you're going to convince them to do that, because This is the rainy day fund. That would be irresponsible to get rid of the rainy day fund. And that's not going to fly. And you need to argue with the right from the right. So that means we're doing this to be more responsible, not less. And so that's the once the tax cuts take effect, we only take a small portion of that instead of the whole chunk, and leaving that small portion in. That way, compounding interest will do its job and continue to grow the fund, so we don't have to ever raise taxes for it.
So you're going to have to put this in a fund as like a stock manager kind of something.
Yeah, and I would. That's exactly how I would do it. Is I would actually give it to a professional financial manager.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't let the city council manage it, because this is how I came to a corporate corporate government point of view, was that the incentives of democracy are just all wrong. For managing the anti-tax. I invented the anti-tax first, and then I came up with private statecraft as the control mechanism for it. To how do you make sure that this thing isn't going to get squandered? Because democracy just doesn't work with this. You ideally really want a corporate monarchy, so to speak, which is not really a monarchy, but it's its own thing. You'd want a corporate incentive structure to manage this thing. But you can kind of backdoor that in, because we don't have that right now. But you can backdoor it in by simply giving it to a professional manager who at least they're licensed professionals, like with a Series 7 or a Series 3, that they can properly invest these things with a good degree of responsibility.
Okay, so being here in Lockhart, I mean, there is no Libertarian Party.
Yeah.
Does a political party, in your mind, matter at all for this type of thing?
Well, for local elections, they're usually nonpartisan, so the parties actually don't play a role. They do, but they officially don't. And that actually would be something I would try to change while I'm in there, is to make sure that the parties do play a role. And
how so?
I would say, okay, we need to make our elections partisan. Right now they're nonpartisan. We need to change that, because obviously that's how the one Democrat got in there in the first place, is because people didn't see the D and vote him away.
That's a good point.
You need to have that needs to be fixed, because that's the only way a liberal can get elected in such a red area like this, is that people don't realize that they're a Democrat, and they are. And but if you at least put a D next to their name, people know, okay, D bad, that guy's going. We're going to replace that with an R, and an R like Councilman Buck.
And then, is there a path forward? All right, I'm elected. I got a guy elected with me, and we've got a few people we trust. We're trying to push some of this through. What's the long-term goal we're looking at? Is there then an effort to privatize some public assets at some point? Excuse me. Oh, yeah. This is what we don't talk about.
Well, we could talk about it a little bit, because this is something Hoppe talked about.
Yes, that's kind of what I meant.
Yeah, I'd say as a long-term effort, what you really want to do is have the local government as its own little entity, and its property is being, it's renting the property kind of from the people. Okay. And like the people are the owners of the property in the amount of taxes they've paid over their lifetime, and they're given shares of that. You basically IPO the thing, and you would give the taxpayers shares based on how much taxes they've paid over their life, because that's what they have. That's what they're owed, and the piece of property exists. There's no liquidating that. And then the state would use its tax revenue to rent that from the people.
I remember when I possessed no nuance at all, and I thought that everything, that statism was statism, and working towards. I remember when I thought that I was smarter than Hans Hermann Hoppe.
Yeah,
I know that's an appeal to it. I know that's an appeal to authority fallacy. I'm echoing back, guys. I can hear myself.
Try now.
I know that's an appeal to authority fallacy, but still, if I'm saying that I'm smarter than probably who most people consider to be the smartest libertarian alive, maybe step back.
Yeah, seriously.
Maybe rethink what you're not doing.
You've read one book and you think you're smarter than the guys who wrote all the books. That's like, I'm sorry, you're not. You need to have a little bit more humility.
Yeah, and that's what and that's what nuance takes. That's what looking at a situation and deciding, okay, maybe we want to do something about this. Maybe we can construct some way that we can do this from the local level. And I think that, Hans understood that. He's like, you're not going to go. I mean, he clearly says in there, he's like, don't even pay attention to national elections. He implies state elections as well, that this has to be done on the local level. But obviously, like your local town that has 24,000 people is so similar to like the military industrial complex and, the 202 area code. Yeah. I mean, I wish that I was still black markets. Sure. Yeah. Whatever. Sure. Why don't you talk about agorism and the way you talk about it in as far as archotropism goes?
Well, I'm usually fairly complimentary of agorism, because if you go to the second law of archotropism, which is that basically that the strong prey upon the power seeks consolidation from low concentration to high concentration, and the consolidation of power is what's defined as predation. Predation is defined as wealth.
Breaking up again,
because wealth and power are interchangeable. You say something?
Yeah, you're breaking up again.
Okay, so where did I break up?
Just go to start over.
Okay, so basically, power seeks consolidation from low concentration to high concentration. In other words, the strong prey upon the weak. The weak get subsumed by the powerful, and the power and predation is defined as the consolidation of power. So, anytime you're being productive and you're creating new wealth, because the value of power is always fixed, it's always relative. It's not absolute. Because of that, anytime you create new wealth, you're creating new power, and that new power basically has an inflation effect on the old and pre-existing power. So basically, by creating new wealth, you're actually predating upon the state. So if you're an agorist sort of mentality where you want to create new wealth that is not taxable by the state, well, by doing that, you're actually creating a lot more wealth you're actually predating upon the state. So production is actually a form of predation against the state. And, black markets are they pay no taxes, at least, but they also have to pay a whole lot of extra regulatory costs. And by regulatory costs, I mean the point of trying to, evade the costs associated with evading the state and hiding from them. So there are a lot of extra costs associated with that. So
are you talking about costs just if they get caught type of costs?
Yeah. Okay. And it takes money to try to hide your drugs in the drug mules and try to get them across the border, pay people to do that, and hide them in wheel wells and stuff like that. That takes money, and that's an extra regulatory cost they do pay. Okay. But that they're not paying that to the state. Their customers they're transferring that cost to the customers, and by creating this new wealth, they are in fact predating against the state. However, it's like, okay, you're not going to kill the state that way. You are creating new wealth, and that's good. And you are enhancing your own liberty by doing that. But that's your own liberty. It's not everybody else's liberty, and it's not really affecting the state. So in fact, they've kind of planned for this. If you notice that most people don't really pay taxes, and the income tax is kind of on the honor system. So if you're one of the suckers like me who's actually paying it, then they've kind of planned for most people are going to do the honor system, and and they actually have honor and are going to pay it. And by the way, they're not wrong about that. But they assume that there's a certain percentage of the population that's just going to be like, actually, I don't have honor and I'm not paying you, and it's not worth your time and money to come after me. So I think I'm like basically free and clear as long as I don't really obviously out myself. So, and that's so basically they've planned for you to screw them that way, or screw them out of their money. It's baked into their plans. Yes.
Sure. Okay.
It's also there's this agorist argument that agorism took down the Soviet Union, and the whole argument was, well, there was this company basically that was brought into existence because no one could fix washing machines, no one could fix dryers, stuff like that. So there was this whole black market company that did it, and it got to the point where they were so huge that the state just gave them like a license, just like said, here, we're making you legitimate and everything. And the argument could be made that by doing that, you're prolonging the state. That agorists are actually prolonging the state, that the state would fall apart, that the people would be like, okay, this is illegitimate. We can't live. We need to change. There needs to be change. But no, you're actually, by providing all of these things, you're prolonging it. Like it's almost an anti-accelerate, that right. It would accelerate to the end if there weren't these people stepping in and going, okay, here you go. Like he's talking about, well, I'm talking about avoiding vax demanders and providing alternatives to them. Well, sure. Okay, but if everybody has a fake vaccine card and the state goes on. Whereas if half the population hasn't gotten vaxxed and they go, okay, you have to get vaxxed, people are going to be like, no, that's not happening. And And you are right that cheering DeSantis, you are right. Cheering what DeSantis is doing is prolonging the state, but it's only prolonging Florida. Yeah. Okay. And I want to see everything break up. As somebody who believes in secession and decentralization, I don't want to see DeSantis run for president of the United States. I want to see him run for president of Florida, or preferably king of Florida.
Yeah.
But so I think that there is a good argument that agorism actually prolongs the state and actually prolongs things. And so does DeSantis doing this. But by DeSantis doing this, I want secession. The state's not going away. The people are always going to want a state. The majority of people, I'm talking over 90% of the people, are always going to want a state. So I would rather have a state that's actually going in the right direction than one that, no, it gives BoomerCon's president. Shut up. I'm sure I'll see you I'm sure you'll be commenting on my YouTube channel because that's the only thing you have in life. Okay. But you're prolonging. There's nuance. There are different things that can actually be done that in certain directions, in other directions, it's not just one thing. And saying it's just one thing, you're really controlled opposition.
Yeah. And I would disagree right there that, cheering DeSantis on is prolonging the state, because if you remember the definition of archotropism, that the state uses chaos to extract order, and that's how it increases its power. I would argue that by these private actors, being bigoted and trying to enforce these vaccinations on their customers, I would say that's chaos, and they're the ones providing the chaos, that is definitely going to get extracted as re-extracted with order and used to increase the state's power. And DeSantis could have power grabbed far more than he did, but he didn't. He power grabbed quite a lot less, and he's trying to reduce the actual chaos. Which, if you're reducing chaos, it's like that's something that's actually going to decrease the the state's power, because that's the fuel. The chaos is the fuel that fuels the state. So, and I would disagree there that is what's in fact happening. And if there had been some other form of private action that could do more to decrease that chaos from that, that's something that we should support. But that doesn't exist because we don't have private states. If we have a private state, the way I would handle it as the private statesman is, I would actually do it. I would do it slightly differently. I would say, okay, you're allowed to discriminate, but you have to provide some extra form of service. You can't deny. You have to find some other way to provide these customer service, because that adds a second layer of cost to it. Not only are you losing customers because you're a bigot, but you still have to provide them a service at now what has an extra higher cost to it, which is just going to be pure overhead. So your bigotry is actually a double loss instead of a single loss. The way DeSantis did it is just by blanket prohibition. That's only one layer. That kind of masks the. It doesn't quite give them the cost that they really should be incurring. And I would say, the way he did it is inefficient or suboptimal. Let's go with suboptimal. And there was a more clever way to punish the bigots that he should have gone with. But that, that's something I think would have been better, is actually use the incentives as weapons. And that's something I'm trying to push, is doing something like that. If you properly use incentives as weapons, you're going to decrease the amount of ambient chaos for the state to feed on.
Well put. Pete, you got anything? Because I can take this somewhere in a direction, but I want to let you speak first.
Nah, you go.
Is with your idea, the wheels are turning here, because I kind of want to do this at some point.
Keep it up.
Elected city council person, got that set. Got your friend in there, got that set, got people that you trust for the most part. There's not many here. I think I said there's 6 or 8. Is mayor then the ultimate goal, or is it city manager?
They have 2 different roles.
Yeah.
And I would say as mayor, you're the one with the legitimate leadership. City manager is usually an appointee position, usually.
Okay.
That's because that's a full-time role.
Okay.
And that's something you do as a full-time job. It's kind of that's similar to like your prime minister, sort of, not quite, but that's the, you have your elected leaders, and they have an appointee that actually does the work, full time. But the city manager usually will make recommendations to them of, well, here's the way I think the system works and how we should do it.
Yeah.
And maybe you appoint your buddy to that, another buddy to that role.
Okay.
But if you've already got one in there, I wouldn't try to fight that, particularly if he's a good guy and if he usually the responsible, conscientious people are the ones who get to that job, and that's kind of what it takes for that role. If he's an idiot, get him out. But I would try to minimize the amount of conflict. And the idea is we're just going to get we get one, maybe one Republican out, or if there's a Democrat, you go for that one first because that's the enemy. And, it's always preferable to beat the enemy than to beat up on friends. So that's the, Nicholas Blanchard. I wonder what size city you're proposing to capture initially, Andrew. Anything that's not a big blue area. Basically, anything that has a substantially red population, where the Democrats are not going to get elected unless people don't know that they're a Democrat. That's the sort of place I would. That's and by the way, that's like 90% of cities basically is that fall into that category, because there's like close to 20,000 municipalities in the United States, and all but like a few hundred are very, very, very heavily red. And so so this works basically anywhere except a big blue city.
So mayor is the goal, though, for someone to work that. Okay.
Yeah, because you're the lead. You're the leader, and with the Republicans, they have a very hierarchical mindset.
Yeah.
To where they think, okay, this is the guy in charge. We should listen to him because he has authority. And they think that way to a fault. And we're going to use that as a way to we are that guy that has the authority and wants to move the city in this direction. Well, people are going to listen to you, and at a very minimum, hear you out. And there's another way you could do this, where if you had a substantial organization like a super PAC that could help fund you, you could get some activists to go around door to door and explain to the voters this system kind of in a very simplistic way. Hey, this is just a different way of doing tax cuts. With the money that's already been taxed, we're not going to be raising taxes on you, because the whole point of this is to cut taxes for
right,
you.
Right.
This is just a tax cut. Sign here, so and make a petition.
Right.
And if you get like a few thousand signatures on that petition, that's enough. And you just you and your buddy would walk in with the 1,000 signature petition, say, well, look, and we've explained this to the people. They seem to like the idea. I think we should do a pilot program and just call it a pilot program, and really it's the full thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Jose.
For like Jose, wonderful to have you here. The feds really don't want y'all to talk about this. Actually, I would say this is in the feds' best interest. Too. With the anti-tax, there really are no losers. Even the left still kind of gets what they want. They're not idiots about it, which is okay. But if they understand, they're still going to get what they want. Because remember, it's a concept that really comes, or at least it was first invented by a whole bunch of Nordic democracies to fund their welfare programs. And I'm sure that they will see it as an opportunity to fund the welfare programs. We're not going to use it for that, but I'm sure that they'll let it through only so that they can try to pervert it later. And so and we're obviously going to have to fight them to make sure they don't pervert it. And I think that's doable. Yeah, I see what you mean. He's talking about our internet connection, Buck.
Is it bad? Oh, gotcha.
But
I'm out in the country. See what happens. My first proposal will be to raise the goddamn internet connection around here.
Or get hardwired.
Yeah, I might have to do that. David, to answer your question, that's something that Hoppe addresses, and that was what must be done speech that's been transcribed at this point. He kind of used Ron Paul. He didn't say Ron Paul's name, but I believe he was referring to Ron Paul. You can have anti-democratic people elected democratically and with no issue there. And he says we've had that happen. I believe he's talking about Ron Paul, but I would have no issue with that. I'm anti-democracy, but if that's the system it takes to get me elected, then it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, the Republicans are probably not huge on democracy, particularly after what just happened. Where right. The Democrats acted very anti-democratically in putting Biden in charge or installing him as president because he didn't get elected. I'm sorry, that some of those, but a whole few million of those ballots are bullshit. And and I would just argue on that. If I were going to be trying to argue with the Republicans to say this is why we should not be supporting democracy anymore, it's like, well, they're cheating, so we should do that too. And but as I was saying with the anti-tax, there really are no loser parties here that are not going to get what they want in some way. For the Democrats, they see an opportunity to pervert this into a welfare system, and I'm sure for the Republicans, they see this as a tax cut. And they're hardwired to believe in tax cuts, so that's easy. And the feds, if you really want to get your federal taxes cut by this, I would just hook up a pipeline of tax money from the anti-tax straight to the federal government as kind of a voluntary tax substitution. I would have Rand put like in one of those 3,000 page bills that nobody fucking reads, just a few lines about how if your local government has a municipal or urban wealth fund, that money from that can be used as a substitute for your federal income tax. And maybe you can do that proportionally, maybe you can do that as an absolute thing, and that's easy. And that way you could actually have no federal income tax in your municipality and within your jurisdiction that way. So the feds would still get their money, and you could have a tax break that is taken care of for you by the money you've already paid into taxes. So that would be and you could do that at your state level too. There's nothing stopping you. So, and that would be and by the way, that's optimal for them because God knows they would want to try to manage their own, but they know that they're going to be bad at it. They know this isn't going to work well for them because it's Congress, and it's probably they probably have some sort of understanding that, okay, if we try to do this ourselves, we're going to fuck it up. So if we just have a pipeline that goes from us down to the local government where the anti-taxes held down there, that might work out better for us.
What are your thoughts on this?
All sounds like statism to me.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like liberty to me, and that's the reason it sounds like statism to you is because you don't understand archotropism and you need to learn some economics.
What about this? What Carlos is
saying? I know. Buck, is your administration going to hold any physical gold reserves?
Is that something I don't know, Carlos?
Probably not.
Right.
That's expensive,
and that's not what they're dealing in, correct?
Yeah, no. But cryptocurrency is a different story.
Okay.
So that would be something else you could easily put in is, well, we could make some laws that are a little bit more friendly to cryptocurrency in our jurisdiction, mm-hmm. and maybe give them a tax discount if they want to pay you in cryptocurrency, which is a lot more valuable than fiat.
All right. Well, shit. What else you guys got? What you want to talk about? The floor is yours.
Well, I would say for, I think the next level is, well, what do you do about spending?
Right.
And I got this question and I responded at length on my Twitter, but yeah, okay. I like that. Actually, that's a good question right there. We'll hit to that one first. What is stopping the state or feds from seizing one of these wealth funds if you piss them off enough? Well, I would say if you have there's strength in numbers. The thing that I wouldn't try to piss them off, until there's enough of us, and there's enough money coming in through it that they don't want to take the goose that laid the golden egg and cut its throat. And that, because if they start seizing these things, that's going to heavily disincentivize them to heavily disincentivize other people from starting up one of these funds. And also, there is this was a famous case back in the very early 1800s where, there was a case about is the federal government allowed to tax the states directly, yes or no? And the Supreme Court said no. And I would say, I think that was based on the non-commandeering clause in the Constitution that they argued that. And the Supreme Court said, no, you're not allowed to tax the states directly. I think that was that wasn't Marbury versus Madison. I forget. Yeah, I forget what the case was, but basically the result of it was you're not allowed to directly tax the states, and that you're not allowed to do that. So I assume that if the if your local municipality is incorporated as a subset, as an administrative unit of your higher level state of the one of the 50, then by that I would say, okay, they're probably not allowed to just seize that, because that would be taxation of the states, which the Supreme Court says they're not allowed to do. And I would argue that that defense that way, and I think that would win. But yeah, but again, like they it's just in their own incentives. It's like you don't want to, cut the neck of the goose that laid the golden egg, because basically this thing allows them to, raise quite a lot more in taxes every year due to compounding interest than they would if they, just tax the people directly, because most people's productivity is only a few percentage points, whereas the stock market is double digits usually. So the if they want to rely more on the anti-tax fund and allow it to grow more, then that in turn increases their own revenue. So, and again, they already believe in cutting taxes. As we've seen repeatedly, it's one of the only things the Republicans are actually reliable at getting done. That and abortion, which, by the way, woohoo, abortion's now illegal in Texas, or at least effectively illegal. 6 weeks that's probably not enough time for most women to realize they're pregnant. So wonderful, they have outlawed abortion. I'm happy.
Yeah, but they did it through the state, so that doesn't count. Or I can go the other direction and be like, well, I mean, you're you're just oppressing women.
And I would say, prohibiting murder is not oppressing women. What the real oppression there is all the women that get killed as babies before they had a chance to live. That's real oppression. And using the state to defend natural rights is a legitimate use of statecraft. Again, because if you understand that all statecraft, or the right to statecraft comes from being a monopoly on your own private property. You have the right to exclude people from your private property. That's what that is, and that's the therein right there is the personal right to statecraft. So if the natural if the statecraft is a natural right to defend the natural rights, if that's the enforcement mechanism for it, then then using any state, whether it's your illegitimate local government, state government, or federal government to defend natural rights is a legitimate use of statecraft.
It's also, this is something I had not thought about coming into this abortion stuff and the concealed carry stuff that changed here. The reaction from the left has been really nice, as far as how I read it. Really? Joanne Reed, Texas is basically a small Soviet republic at this point, with neighbors spying on neighbors, hoping to collect a cash bounty in addition to being an apartheid state for non-white voters, blah, 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 blah.
I mean, that's a compliment coming from a leftist.
She's not talking about the vax passport stuff, ironically. She's talking about the abortion stuff, and I thought James Lindsay tweeted this. This is why I'm tending toward thinking the new abortion law was a brilliant political strategy.
Yeah. If
that keeps those people out, then maybe it is.
Maybe it is a good thing.
She should get that time traveler that she claimed went back in time and changed all of her blogs to put homophobic homophobic rants in there to go back and get this changed. Yeah. The woman's a complete psychopath.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's
Bindit actually just made an excellent point that there's quite a few local communities that are already predisposed to this sort of idea, and this should be very quickly adopted. This is a really easy way that really shouldn't have any fighting over it. And and he mentions port towns, company towns, and faster corporate buy-in. Corporations are like my number one people I want to get on board with this, because anything that has their backing gets done.
Yeah.
And this is something that's so obviously in their best interest, because remember what I said about them wanting to, if you hook this up to the federal government, you could get your own personal income tax cut. Well, the way that they would probably try to pervert that is to have the corporate income tax cut, which is something they would definitely want and try to do. But by having that there, that means if the corporations are backing it, the state's not going to touch it, and that would be a wonderful reason wonderful sort of defense there. Natural defense that the state would not want to come in and confiscate that, because that's going to piss off the corporations whose taxes just got raised by that. So they're not going to like that.
You would want a certain amount of elites on your side in this, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the elites are, really in the corporations. They are the real government. And that's why you have a whole bunch of plebs, who are left over here in the actual government. Like, why is it that our government is a mixture of plebs and elites when we have more than enough elites to get, to fill all of those slots, 435, I think, or something like that, or 535 plus a president and vice president. It's because the remainder of the elites are high up in the corporations. That's where the real government is. Yeah. And so they are going to be, if this is in their incentive right here, remember, the state's kind of just middle management. The real managers are going to take one look at this and say, okay, this is in our best interest. Let's, see if we can help propagate this thing outwards. And so I think that's that's an excellent point, that company towns would be an excellent way of managing something like this. And, I think that's a way to make this a lot more. Nicholas Blanchard says he thinks that Tulsa, Oklahoma has an urban wealth fund. I'll have to look into that.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe use that as,
as another example of,
right.
Hey, you're not the first person to try this.
Yeah. What else you got, Andrew?
Carlos has a good question for you, Buck.
I think that's the case. I've only lived here. Oh shit! Now it is headed up towards 10 months. I need to look into these kind of things. Obviously, it looks to me, driving around, that would be the case. Yes, certainly railroad industry is something here, but other than that, I assume it's farming, because there's not much else.
I mean, someone's got to be supplying the food to Austin,
right?
And you got to have that. You got to have that production fairly close to the market, because I can't travel too far. So, yeah, but a rural agricultural community is perfect for something like this, because why should they be having to pay property taxes every single year? Because particularly when they have to own so much land, because that's their bread and butter. I mean, there's probably some different sort of tax treatment for that. But if I were going to be, if I would, knocking on doors, and most of those doors are owned by farmers, I would say, this is a way we could, probably entirely get rid of whatever land tax or whatever, or tax that you're paying, because this is good for your bread and butter, literally,
right?
Literally bread and butter. So,
$12,000 next year.
$12,000.
Property tax.
Oh my!
Ridiculous.
Oh my! I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds horrible.
It is. Yeah.
Oh gosh, Buck.
That's like South Florida level. That's like South Florida level property taxes. That's insane.
Texas has very high property taxes, and if I go in, like, maybe next year in the legislative season to get one or two of these anti-taxes hooked up to the state level, that would be an argument I would point out, because they've been running on, we're going to cut the property tax, and they've been doing that for 20 years and haven't done it. Yeah. And this would be an easy way for them to, fulfill that promise without actually fulfilling it. And so this is just a different way of them getting their same money. And that's how again, it's like, it's in their interest to appear to fulfill their campaign promises. And like John Huffines, he would be an excellent guy if he were in charge. And I don't know if he's going to win, but he's certainly got the money to win. He's got very deep pockets. And I don't want to bring the anti-tax to him, because before he wins, whoever wins is the one I bring it to. But I don't want this thing politicized, because if you bring it to a candidate while they're in the middle of an election, they're going to use it as a political billy club, and you don't want that with this sort of thing. You want this thing to be very free of conflict, where this is something everybody agrees on, and nobody wants to nobody wants to politicize, and except for maybe the left, and that's something we will hang them for.
Right. And yes, I do think Don Huffines, I assume he would be into this. There is a sales tax here, 8.25%. Nicholas.
Yeah. And
what's up, Mark Metz? Welcome, man. I was listening to your episode with Justin earlier. Good job. Mark Metz Substack is fabulous, as is Pete's, of course. But Pete's, Mark Metz, and Mark Berenson are the Substacks I read most of all.
Oh.
Yeah, but yeah, Pete's that one's by any means necessary. Mark Metz, what's yours? What's the name?
Let me see Mark's. I'll just check my email box.
I just want to drop a few plugs in here for these.
The Emergent.
The Emergent, but at Substack, that's for Mark Metz.
Very paleo oriented.
And by the way, I think Tho was in here earlier about the about this paleo strategy. I think this is something that should be the centerpiece of a paleo strategy. Is here's a way we're actually going to get rid of all taxation for you and still fund your government. And I think this is something we could very much work with the right on as, the paleo strategy, because this is something that suits their time preference. Remember, they're a low time preference for power, and which is closest to us as libertarians, because we have a 0 or near 0 time preference for power. Where we want basically no wealth converted into coercion and aggression. And they kind of want just a little bit, and they want to defer gratification pretty much infinitely on all the rest, and leave the rest for the people. And so they're our natural allies. And I think this is something that we could work, really bring us together with our allies and help, if paleo libertarians want to run on this, then this is something that I think our allies would be receptive to, and they would actually help us out with this.
What's pretty funny is Tho was in here earlier. I guess he must have left, and right after he left, he did a Twitter post, and it's a picture of someone being guillotined, and he captioned it, final words, quote, "This isn't a legitimate use of the state," unquote.
Yes. And obviously Tho Bishop's Substack.
Yeah.
Rothbard Rockwell Report, of course.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they the I think it's his pinned article on there. It's the Paleo Strategy. It's Lou's article. Yeah. That article's so amazing. When I was at the Mises Institute in July, I talked to Lou about that I was reading that article again, and he was just laughing.
So cool. It is so cool. He's my favorite. Are we going to go eat lunch?
I think I'm very hungry.
Yeah, me too.
And my wife's calling me right now. She's probably very hungry.
All right.
So,
Pete, thanks for hanging out with us, man.
Buck, I'd love to.
Thank you for including me in this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was cool. I'm glad you always add a lot to whatever you're a part of. So this has been good to have you here. Carlos, Mark, Niklas, Ryan, Tho, everyone in the comments that's been there. Marshall, of course. Thank you guys so much. And the rest of you watching way after this is done live, thanks for watching this. And it's been Counterflow Live. Andrew from Popular Liberty signing off. Pete.
Wonderful to be here in Lockhart. Pete, thanks for joining.
Talk to you guys soon.
I appreciate it. Take care. Man. Bye.
There you go. Yeah, you got to press escape first and get to the other screen. There's the leave button. Okay, it hasn't quite appeared yet.